What's going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review, back yet again with another King of Fighters Allstar video. And in today's video, we are going to be bringing you an Everyman's guide to the expert difficulty for the newest guild raid boss, Nightmare Geese. But before we get into all of that, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe, as we are getting that much closer to 2,000 subs. And let's go ahead and get into today's video. So the first thing that you're going to want to know about the expert guild raid difficulty is going to be the rewards, as well as what dot you are going to need to carry in, and that's where we're going to go ahead and start. So first things first, for expert difficulty, you are going to need a minimum of 408.24 million damage in order to be able to do what is considered a 1 key for the expert difficulty for Nightmare Geese. And if you do that, you will be granted a 7-tier box for the guild raid mystery boxes, and inside of here you are going to notice that you are going to be able to get your double attack shock R stones, which is very cool. There's a lot of really good shock characters out there, and now that we have Nightmare Geese as a rotating boss in guild raid, shock damage is going to be just that much more important, so having these stones will be very necessary going forward in the future. But as far as the way that we would get these and the way that we are going to pull this off, you are going to need poison damage in order to be able to weaken his shield and do as much damage to him as possible. So what are the best poison options in the game currently, and how should you approach this? Now, as you can see, I have an assortment of different poison type characters here, and we're going to walk you guys through a couple of different ways of doing this for expert difficulty. I'm going to show you guys two different runs. One's going to be using a full meta team, which is of course going to be your full SS team, using SS Kyo, SS Athena, and SS Mai, and utilizing these characters as strikers. But then I'm also going to show you guys a second run, which is going to involve using a poison character dedicated for your third slot on your team, and I'm going to be using Dancer Elizabeth for that example. So first things first, poison characters. Now, my recommendation and the meta for this is definitely going to be using these poison type characters as strikers. Now, as far as striker abilities, for those of you who are not aware, I'll go ahead and show you using Leona here. If we go ahead and take a look and you go all the way down here in their skill tree, you can see what their striker ability is going to be, and as you will see here, Leona is going to be able to deal venom damage to the target for 5 seconds upon landing a skill, which is really what we are looking for in a striker for this mode. So all of these characters here, with the exception of this Elizabeth, are going to be able to give you poison on striker. So these are, in my opinion, some of the best in the game currently for poison, but there are other characters available out there that will be able to give this to you. Now, you can use Goro if you want to, the Christmas Goro. He's another really good option. If you have him fully built up, you just use and work with what you've got. Now, as far as which strikers I like to use, you can look through each one of these, and each one of these is going to have their different ups and their downs, their pros and their cons, but the two that I really prefer are actually going to be these ones here. So I like to use Lynn, and I like to use Leona. Now, there's plenty of different options, and there's different reasons as to why you would want to use any of these characters, and with Leona here, she definitely does have her downsides. Now, she only has a 5-second duration when it comes to the venom damage that she's dealing, which definitely isn't anywhere near as good as what you would see with some of these other characters, such as perhaps Alice, or with your Halloween Shang-Fi, or any of these other characters. Some of them are going to have much longer durations, but if you take a look at Leona here, she is actually going to give active team members the 10% power upon a successful attack as well. So I really like her striker skill. It gives you some extra benefits, and that's why I like to use it. You just have to keep in mind that you're going to have just that much tighter of timing on these tag in and outs and all of these skill rotations, so that is really the only downside to using her instead of some of these other characters. But there are other options out there, and I can show you guys how you would look that up. So if you guys are interested in knowing this, if this is something that you guys don't already know, if you go in here and you go over to view more, then you can scroll down here and you'll see poison and you'll see all of your different dots. And if you go ahead and click the dot that you are looking for, it'll go ahead and bring up all the different characters that are going to have those dots associated with their kits. And so this is really what you're looking at with poison here. Like I showed you guys earlier, I've already shown you guys the best options so far. The only one that wasn't there there in that little montage of characters was Lynn, and I do use Lynn for a striker on my team, but I just didn't have enough room to fit him into that little grouping there. So with Lynn here, the reason why I like to use him is he's going to deal poison damage equal to 28% of attack to all enemies every 1 second for 7 seconds. So he's a very dependable one as well, and I have not had any issues using these two strikers so far. Once you get the rotations down and once you kind of get the muscle memory down, which is definitely a big point when it comes to Nightmare Geese as a guild raid boss, then this stuff becomes kind of second nature, and I will show you guys kind of what I'm talking about as we go through these different runs. But I definitely recommend you guys look through these. There's a lot of really good budget ones. Like I said, if you are on a budget, this Halloween Shang-Fi here is going to be really good. If you take a look at her striker skill, it's going to deal poison damage equal to 6% of attack to all enemies every 1 second for a whopping 10 seconds, which is going to be quite a bit longer than some of these other characters. But again, I chose some of the other ones just for other various reasons, and in some cases it just came down to the CP increase for my other characters on my team, which for those of you who do not know, if you are going to use characters as strikers, definitely try to put cards, and even if you do not have stones or anything like that you want to throw at these characters, at least make sure that you have cards on these characters. It doesn't even matter what kind of cards you have on them. Just try to throw a fast set on there or cards that are going to give you a lot of CP, because that CP does give your character that is on the battlefield a little bit of a bump as well. So it definitely makes a difference. And again, the imprint stone part isn't necessarily a prerequisite, but it definitely does help over time. So down the road, if you're able to put stones on your strikers that you find yourself using quite often, just as a general rule of thumb, that's always a good thing to do. So those are pretty much going to be the strikers. Like I said, the ones that I would really focus on are going to be Leona, Alice, then Lynn, and then probably the Halloween Shang-Fi here. So those are the ones that I would really recommend, and then outside of that, you can kind of just pick from what you've got. So that is going to be the options for poison strikers. As far as using any of these characters as actual designated poison characters on a team, my recommendations are going to come down to two characters. Really, the two that I would recommend are going to be this Dancer Elizabeth and this Leona. Now, with these two, the one that I recommend the most is going to be Elizabeth. The reason why I recommend Elizabeth so much is because Elizabeth is going to have a lot of multi-hits on her skills. She's going to have that really good Starlight core that she has right here, and so she's going to be able to do a ton of damage to the shield for Geese, and you're going to see it in the run that I show you guys, where she's going to be able to drop 40, 50, 60% of a shield in seconds. And so that makes her very rare as far as poison characters go for Guild Raid, because none of these other characters, as good as they are going to be as good at shield shred as her, and it really just comes down to the coupling of the multi-hits with her skills, as well as that really good Starlight core. So she's a really, really good character. Unfortunately, her typing being a purple balance makes her not want to fit into teams very well, so you're going to notice that she doesn't necessarily fit into some of these teams, and that's unfortunate. But really, if you take a look at the typing of all these poison characters, that's something that you could say about most of them. So unfortunately, none of them really like to fit into teams very well. They don't play well with others in that capacity, but you got to work with what you've got. And then, of course, from there, Leona is probably going to be your second best option, or a Goro, whichever one that you have. But with Leona here, she's definitely a really good character. But again, she's not going to be as good at shield shred, so I do think that there is more value in this Dancer Elizabeth. That, and she's also a character that is going to be just that much easier to build up for you guys, being that you don't need a bunch of dupes for Dancer Elizabeth, and you can just make those dimensional invitations. So that is going to be your poison characters. Now, as far as doing these runs, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the builds on these characters, and then we'll go ahead and jump into these runs. So for Kyo here, you definitely want to use him as your leader, because he's going to give that awesome 60% increase to SS Fighters attack, and being that we are using a full SS team for this first run, that is going to be the best possible for leader. And then when you take a look at the cards here, you are going to want to use Serena set. Serena is just going to be the king of guild raid, so, or queen, however you want to look at it. But when it comes to the Serena set, that's definitely going to be the top dog for card sets for this guild raid. And when it comes to any of these other card sets, you can pretty much run with whatever you've got available if you don't have Serena. Of course, Akane is always going to be a very strong option. There's always a case to be made for a Leah set, and then from there you can go ahead and use some of these other cards, like for instance, maybe if you have, say for instance, the City of Darkness, maybe you have the Gears of Fate, so on and so forth. Those are also going to be really good, but really Serena set is going to be the way to go for all these characters, and that's why you'll see me running it on all three of these characters on this team. Now when it comes to these other cards here, for the options, I'm just going ahead and running with the 7 Knights option card here, just because I want to get that super armor for my tag-ins, but you can use any of the other tag-in option cards. Like for instance, if you want to use this one here, you can use this one. Otherwise, you can go ahead and use the My one, which you'll see that I have equipped to one of my other characters on the team. Otherwise, from there, cooldown reduction cards in general are going to be the way to go if you don't have any of these really good cards for tag-ins, but tag-in cards are definitely going to be the best for guild raid. So that is going to be what I have on Kyo. As far as stones, we've talked about this in the past. I prefer, as far as these are concerned, for my third stone to have a Volume 1 Hexagon stone, just because I like that increase to my active skill damage by 10%. But if you have a full set of SS Volume 2 stones, then just run with that, and that will treat you just fine. So that is going to be what I have on Kyo. As far as what I have on Mai, pretty much the same story as before. Now, there is one caveat with my Mai here that I do want to bring up. In my run, I do use this as my card for my 3PG slot, for my card slot, but I almost prefer this card here, and the reason why I prefer this one almost is just because it has a very fast animation on it, and usually that's not something you look for in Guild Raid, but being that we are using her to just purely jump in as quick as possible when he's going to be, and by he I mean Nightmare Geese, when he's kind of in that weird loop from having his aura canceled by Athena. Typically this here will be enough to fit in as far as the animation time to break that shield in that short timing that you're going to have after you have skipped that animation using Athena's finisher. So this here is actually going to be really strong in comparison to the other 3PG option, which just is a little too long in order to get out of it what you were trying to do with the timing of these runs. So keep that in mind. Obviously you can use either or, because I use this one here in these runs, and you see how much damage I'm able to do. I think in one run I do almost 800 million damage, so it really doesn't matter. But in my opinion, this card is probably a little bit better for this particular mode, and so that's just something I wanted to point out. Now, as far as the stones go, I am going to be running the SS Volume 1 stones for the first 2 stones here, and then on my third stone I am running an SS Volume 2 stone with the decreased damage received by 30%. So that is going to be the third stone that I would have had on my Kyo. I pretty much just swapped those stones for these 2 characters, so that's pretty much what you're looking at there. Now, as far as Athena goes, and Athena is pretty much the MVP, on my Athena I basically have another Leah set. I'm going to have another one of the SS Volume 2 option cards, and then I'm going to have this 7 Knights option here. And the reason why I have this is because you want her to have her finisher at all times, because you need it, and there will be times where you are going to be in a very tight time crunch where you're going to need to be able to charge this up as quick as humanly possible. So being that I can get that extra 2% power upon using my active skills, that is very, very clutch. There are plenty of other options out there that you can use. If you want to use, if you have another My option card, you can go ahead and use that. Otherwise, cooldown reduction cards in general are going to be the way to go. And then as far as stones go, it doesn't really make a difference now, being that we have not had Athena back for a while, but really what I use here is I actually have a full set of defense stones for my Athena. Do I regret not having the attack stones? Yeah, probably, but I have what I have. So that is what we have on our Athena, and she is, like I said, going to be the MVP for these runs, and I will show you guys why here momentarily. So those are going to be the cards cards and the builds for the characters. Like I said, on the strikers, just make sure that you have cards on them so that you bump their CP up, because for those of you who are not aware, you do get an increase to your actual fighter's CP in battle whenever you are using strikers, and that will be scaled depending on how much CP the strikers have. So that is what you're looking at there. Now, as far as the other character that I do use in these runs, I do want to make sure that I go ahead and talk about this Dancer Elizabeth here. So on my Dancer Elizabeth, this is going to be the card setup that I used on her for the runs that I used her in. Now, with these, you can go ahead and swap this in and out for like a Serena set or whatever you want to do. For her, I went ahead and did this because I was finding that I was leaving her on the battlefield a lot longer than I would normally if I was using these other characters in full rotations like you will see in the first run that I'm going to show you. So being that I wouldn't be getting as much out of Serena on her in the way that I was using the team using her on the actual team of 3, I wanted to go ahead and use a card set that I would be getting better mileage out of. Now, I do have this card here. I know a lot of people might not have this card because it is randomly dropped from combining your 5-star cards in the battle card menu, but if you don't have this card, any cooldown reduction card will be fine. And then I also use this option here, but again, any cooldown reduction options are going to be just fine for these types of runs. And then as far as stones, I don't even have my stones fully maxed out, but I do have a full set of the 7 Deadly Sins attack stones on my Elizabeth. So that is what I've got there. Those are going to be the cards, those are going to be the builds, those are going to be the strikers, everything you pretty much need to know about all of these runs that you're about to see. So we're going to go ahead and get into 2 runs here. I'm going to start out with a just basic run using a meta team. That way I can talk to you guys about just basic rotations and a few different tips as far as this boss is concerned. And then we'll go ahead and we will talk about the run using Dancer Elizabeth. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this first run just to give you the basics. Now, starting off the fight, I know a lot of people like to start out with the S2. I like to start out with the S1 on KoF just so I can get the burn started, since it's almost instantaneous when you cast it anyway. And then from there, it's all about just swapping in and getting the poison on him with the Athena, and then swapping into Mai, getting off the finisher, breaking that shield, and then from there, it's just about doing as much damage with the shield down as humanly possible. Now, like I said, this is going to be an Everyman run, so this isn't going to be a trophy run, so I'm not going for a billion damage or anything like that. This is just to get you to that 1 key. And so first things first here, the first thing that you need to know is whenever Nightmare Geese lights up like a Christmas tree, like he does right there, and throws his arms in the air like he just don't care, you need to make sure that you have Athena on the ready with that awesome card finisher, because as you see there, he's basically going to continue the animation, but he is not going to put that aura on the ground, and then he's going to immediately rise back up and go back into that same animation, which gives you plenty of time to cast your poison striker, get Mai in, break that shield, and then get KoF back in, get him on his awakening rotation, and just go ham. Now, with my KoF, he is awakening level 5, so I'm going to be doing quite a bit of damage that most people might not if they're going to have lower awakening tier characters. But really from there, it's just about swapping in and out and doing this over and over and over again. So again, you'll see there that I canceled his darkness aura, then I was able to apply the striker, swap into Mai, get the shield down, go back to KoF, rinse and repeat. And if you do this and time this correctly, by the time you get done with the first minute or so of this battle, you should be over 300 million damage already, or right around there, and should be able to fit in at least 2 of KoF's rotations for his awakening, which is going to be the biggest reason why you'd be able to get to that much damage so quickly. So really, that is what you're trying to aim for. And again, the biggest thing is just making sure that you continue to be able to cancel out that darkness aura effect of this Nightmare Geese, because if he gets that off, it is going to ruin your run. So right here, as you see, we are going to be over 300 million damage at just a minute to go. So with that being said, you'd be able to go ahead and get this no problem, but we are going to be getting quite a bit more than the 400 so million damage that we do need in order to 1 key this, but it is overkill. You don't even need that much. just keep that in mind. The biggest thing, again, and the thing that sucks here, and this is something I talked about in the Q&A yesterday, is it's going to be really tough for people that don't have Athena to be able to pull off these runs this way. But with this next run that I'm going to show you guys with Dancer Elizabeth, you're going to see that it is not impossible, and actually on Expert it isn't too difficult, although I will say that you're probably at least going to need Kyo, because Kyo's damage output, being that he's basically the one-punch man of this game now, his damage output is just insane. So as you see here, we're already at the 1 key at 40 some odd seconds remaining, so we don't even need to continue this fight in order to 1 key this, but we're just going to see how much damage we can get here. And again, this is a pretty boring run, but you're just going to keep doing what you're supposed to be doing from those rotations we talked about previously, continuing to swap in and out, using Kyo with the shield down, using Mai to break the shield, and using Athena to apply the poison striker and go ahead and get to the Mai, and then you can go ahead and just keep doing that over and over and over again, using the Athena mainly to just cancel out that darkness aura. So again, the way you do this right there, as you saw, the second you see him light up like a Christmas tree, just drop the Athena, drop that 3PG finisher. He'll drop his hands, but he won't get his darkness aura, and then you can apply the poison, and then you can go to Mai, and then you can break the shield using her rotation of her skills and her finisher, and again, right back to Kyo into his finisher, again, over and over and over. So that is pretty much what you need to know in order to get an easy 1 key clear using a full SS team. There's really not a whole lot fancy to it. You just pretty much need to do that and you'll be good to go. I know a lot of people, depending on the device and depending on the setup, if you're on an emulator, you'll do much better, so on and so forth, can hit, 800, 900, a billion damage. Like I said, though, this is just going to be an everyman's run for those of us who are going to be plebeians on our regular old cell phones, our Android phones, what have you, because I know iOS definitely has a lot better luck with this kind of stuff. But as you'll see here, we almost get to 800 million damage using this, so that is the way that match went, and that was a very good run. Again, we're still learning all of this, so we could have done just that much better, and I'm actually doing a little bit better now. But I wanted to go ahead and show you guys that just so I could go through the basics. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show you guys a run that is not going to be using Athena, and I'm going to show you guys how much different it is, but I also want to show you some stuff about Dancer Elizabeth. So with this type of run, what I use is basically the same types of rotations, but instead of being able to cancel out that darkness aura, which of course we cannot do because we do not have our Athena, we are going to be basically just using our Dancer Elizabeth when the shield is up, because of her fantastic shield shred, to try and drop that shield as quick as possible, and then we are going to be swapping back into our Kyo whenever the shield is down and using his awakening rotation ideally with the shield down in order to get that great damage. But with our Dancer Elizabeth, the nice thing that I really like about her is she's able to use her finishers quite often, and even though her finishers aren't necessarily the greatest, they definitely help as far as her shield shred is concerned. So as you've seen so far, he has not had a chance to be able to use his darkness aura yet, so you can avoid it if you're quick enough, and being that Dancer Elizabeth can drop shield as quick as she can, it's definitely going to not be as tough as one might think in order to be able to keep yourself out of that darkness aura. However, it does come up, it does happen, there's no way around it a lot of the time. Like right here, he is going to be able to get it off because he still has enough shield, and my Elizabeth is not going to be able to drop it quick enough, but we still have him down to about 33% shield here, which is still really, really good. Now, you do notice that I do make quite a few mistakes in this run as well, and I'm still able to go ahead and 1 key this using this team. I went ahead and used this as an example run instead of using a perfect run because I want to show you guys that it is possible to make mistakes, to have things go wrong, and still be able to 1 key this even without Athena, and that is something that I think is really important. Because I think that a lot of times people see us on YouTube, us different YouTubers using these different characters, doing these different runs, and think we don't make mistakes, or that you have to be perfect, or you have to have your timing down 100%. And while if you are going for trophy runs, that might be true, whenever you're doing this sort of thing, it definitely isn't the case. And that's just something I really wanted to point out to you guys, because I want you guys to be aware that you don't need to be perfect in order to be able to 1 key these things. So as you'll see, see, we're already almost at the 1 key, so this isn't necessarily super difficult, even without Athena. Now, it definitely is a different story with Lunatic, but again, I wanted to show this to you guys just to give you some sort of, I just wanted to give you guys some sort of reassurance that you don't necessarily need to have all of these characters in order to make this work, because I know a lot of people have been really upset that they don't have Athena. They decided not to rerun Athena recently, and so that upset people too, because they feel like she's necessary to get through this, which she really isn't. You just have to be really quick on your feet, and you have to really think outside the box, and you're just going to have some of these other characters to compensate. And I've also heard that KoF can cancel his Darknessor as well. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Somebody in the comment section can let me know if it is. I haven't been able to replicate that. But as you'll see, we're already past the 1 key scenario here for Expert, so we don't even, again, need to be continuing this run, really. We're already there, but we'll see how much damage we can do here with this team. But I wanted to show this one to you guys, like I said, for a couple of different reasons, but really those were the main ones. And like I said, there's nothing fancy that you really need to do here. You just need to make sure that you are using your Elizabeth when the shield is up, and then your KoF when the shield is down, and then use your Mai for all the spaces in between. And I did show you guys, I slowed down a little bit of this footage just to show you guys how good Dancer Elizabeth can be at shield shred, and that way you guys can see just how much shield she can take down at one time. But hopefully this gives you guys some reassurance that you can do this without Athena. It is completely doable. Build up your Dancer Elizabeth, build up whatever poison character you have, like a Leona or a Goro or whatever the case may be, and that will still treat you really, really well. And that's almost going to do it for this run, but I want to show you this to you guys real quick. So as you'll see here, 594 million damage, not too shabby. And that is going to go ahead and do it for the Everyman's Guide for Expert difficulty for the Nightmare Geese Howard Guild Raid run. I hope you guys found this informative, and I hope that you guys at least now see that you can do this without Athena. It is completely doable. I hope you guys now know what to look for as far as your rotations and your different strikers. I've shown you guys that you can do this without even having a perfect run, without Athena, using Dancer Elizabeth as your third character for your poison source. And so this isn't necessarily that difficult as long as you really put in the effort and the thought and get these rotations down, but it does require you to have some pretty top tier characters. So if you guys don't have these characters, I am working in the background to try and find different teams thrown together using free-to-play characters in order to make this work. So far I haven't had a lot of time to do that because I'm also working on Lunatic as well and doing an Everyman's Guide to that, which is definitely going to be a lot more sparse than this video was because there's less options. But I wanted to go ahead and show that to you guys. I will bring you guys an update with a free-to-play team whenever I can find one that can get the 1 key down. But that is going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys found it informative. If you guys did, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, because as I mentioned, we are almost at 2,000 subs. As always, I appreciate all the love and support. You guys enjoy the rest of your days, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.